All right. I don't have a real long lesson tonight, so it's okay. We started a few minutes late. We're going to talk about working with people. Sometimes working's not that bad. The challenge is working with people. We'll walk through a few scriptures here. John 4:34 through 38. Jesus said unto them, My meat is to do the will of him that sent me, and to finish his work. Say not ye, There are yet 4 months, and then cometh harvest. Behold, I say unto you, Lift up your eyes, and look on the fields, for they are white already to harvest. And he that reapeth receiveth wages, and gathereth fruit unto life eternal, that both he that soweth and he that reapeth may rejoice together. And herein is that saying true, One soweth, another reapeth. I sent you to reap that whereon you bestowed no labor. Other men labored, and ye are entered into their labors. It makes an interesting point that with a farming analogy, there's one who sows, there's one that goes out and plants the seed, and works that day. And it says there's another person that comes along and does some work in the time when it's time to reap. But the harvest is impossible without both of them. They had to both work together. If the sower neglected his responsibility, then come time for this guy to go out and reap, there would be nothing to reap. If the reaper neglected his responsibility, the sower plants the seed, there's a great harvest, no one goes out to reap the harvest, then what good is it? The harvest was dependent on both people doing their job when they were supposed to do it. One sows, one reaps. That was in your notes. It's impossible without both taking place. The harvest is impossible. It's a combined effort. Nehemiah 4:21, we talk a lot about Nehemiah. Nehemiah built a great wall in 52 days. As best as I can find, the wall is about 4.5 miles long, approximately 15 feet thick. Now, if they built that wall in 52 days, that's 475 feet of wall every day. It's a pretty incredible feat. They done a pretty big task there. The key to that is found, I believe, in Nehemiah 4:21. It says, So we labored in the work. And then it goes on to say, And half of them held spears from the rising of the morning till the stars appeared. But it says, So we labored in the work. Nehemiah did not build a wall. A people working together built a wall. Nehemiah spearheaded it. He provided direction. He provided instruction. But people working together built the wall. And it's interesting that he says that, he sent this clan over here to build and this one over here to build, and they would come together in the middle. We'll talk a little bit about it in a few minutes, but, these people could have felt like, man, I'm just over here all by myself. What are we doing? We're building this portion of a wall in the middle of nowhere. And these people could have felt the same way, and if either one of them had neglected their jobs or failed to do their part, there would have been no coming together. It wouldn't have connected. We labored. That's the key there. 1 Corinthians 3:5 through 9. Who then is Paul, and who is Apollos, but ministers by whom you believed, even as the Lord gave to every man? He said, who's Paul or Apollos? They're just preachers that came and told you about God and you believed. Everybody had that opportunity. It says, I have planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the increase. So then, neither is he that planteth anything, neither he that watereth, but God that giveth the increase. Now he that planteth and he that watereth are one. Every man shall receive his own reward according to his own labor. For we are laborers together with God. Ye are God's husbandry, ye are God's building. It said that the one who planted and the one that watered are one. It's talking about unity. It's talking about teamwork. It's not all about me. This is leadership training. We can't be about building, I can't be about building my ministry. You can't be about building your department, your role in your team. If that's what it is, then it's going to be all about me, and I'm going to neglect the greater good to build myself up. I'm going to hurt the team to better myself. But Paul, if anybody could have said it was all about me, the Apostle Paul, he said, who am I? It's not about me. He said, who's Apollos? It doesn't matter. We're working together. Some plant, some water, all work together. We all have something to do. Every person in here is involved in something. You're working. A lot of people are in several different places. We're all doing our part. And then interestingly, we work together with God. If there's anybody I want on my team, it's God. We can work together all we want to, but without God, we're not going to accomplish all that He wants us to accomplish. We do our very best, and then when our best is done, God goes above and beyond what we can do. And then really, if I do my very best all by myself, I still can't accomplish as much as if me and Joe do our very best together. We work together. Read it again in the Scripture. For we are laborers together. So first, we do everything we can. We are laborers together with God. And when we're doing our best, God honors that, and He carries us on. So there's a few points that I want to focus on tonight that I think will help us working with people. The first one's going to be a little bit more me asking questions. I don't know if you'll have the answers to them tonight. If you don't, when you get home, revisit these things or things we've already talked about and fill this in just to remind yourself.
What was the answer to the last one on 1 Corinthians? We are God's what?
Oh, let me back up. We are God's building. Back to the point of it's not about you, it's not about me, it's not about the physical building. We're building a church. It's about people. So if we can't work with people, we got a real problem. We are God's building. We are God's husbandry or vineyard. So first point, knowing who I am. If I'm going to effectively work with people, I have to know who I am. That's why we spent some weeks here talking about personality and StrengthsFinder, and we try to get people to take love language test. That's kind of what I'm asking here. Who are you? What is your personality? We took the test, but do you still remember? Do you remember what am I like? If not, go back, revisit that. Write it down, make yourself think about it. Understand, who am I? What kind of tendencies do I have? Positive tendencies, negative tendencies. What are my strengths? We had the 5 strengths from StrengthsFinder. Anyone remember all 5 of your strengths right off the top of your head? Other than Pastor, who has them laminated in his wallet. Know who you are. What are you good at? What are you good at? Take some time to really get it in our heads. I couldn't name all 5 of mine, but I'm saying we got to continually keep these things on our mind so that we're fresh. I want to know who I am. I want to know what I'm good at. What's my love language? How do I receive compliments? How do I feel like people care about me? If I don't recognize that about myself, then I don't maybe recognize when somebody's trying to show love or trying to show appreciation because they're not doing it the way I naturally want them to, so I just think they're not doing it at all. What drives you? What is it that you really enjoy to do? These are things that if you take our MAP interview, these are questions that are on there. Well, why is that important? Well, because that determines a lot of what you're going to do well in ministry, well in leading. If you are put in a place where you're doing something that constantly drains you, which is the next question, it's going to be really hard for you to lead. It'll be really hard for you to cast vision and spearhead things. But recognizing what drives me, when I'm done with it, I feel great. I feel like doing more. Be honest and open about who you are. Honest and open. I have to be honest with myself about who I am. It was kind of funny. The more people started taking the StrengthsFinders and the personality test, you started hearing things like, well, I want to change that, or I don't want to acknowledge this. Different things that we realize about ourselves, so we want to overlook those or push those down. Well, I got to be honest with myself about who am I? Who am I? I got to be just real enough to sit down and say, okay, yeah, naturally that's how I respond. That's how I tend right there. And then open, honest and open. Open refers to allowing other people to see who I am. Because I can know who I am and I can do everything I can to hide it. Or I can open up and I can allow people to know who am I. Insecurity, in your notes, insecurity kills relationships. If I'm not comfortable with me, then I'm going to have a really hard time getting to know anybody else. Building a good working relationship with anyone. Because I'm always trying to hide something, or I'm always trying to build myself up in my own eyes. Not even in their eyes, but I'm not comfortable in what I'm good at. Or I'm not comfortable allowing them to be good at something that I know I'm not good at. Insecurity kills relationships. Point number 2, knowing who they are. Knowing who they are. Once you determine and you find out who you are, now we're talking about working with people. Not just working with myself, but I'm working with you, Eric. So now I got to know who Eric is. I got to take the time to identify what personality is Eric. We're all like mini psychiatrists all of a sudden, reading people. No, that's not what I'm talking about, but really finding out what is their personality. Are they sanguine? Are they choleric? Are they phlegmatic, melancholy? How do they respond? What are they good at?
Wouldn't that be beneficial for us all to have access to their 5 strengths and stuff like that then?
I think if you're working in a team, it would be very beneficial to know what people's strengths are. That's actually the next point. Look for their strengths. And look for could be as simple as ask them. If they've already taken the test, if they know what their strengths are, ask the question. Talk about it. I want to kind of address these next few points. I'm going to address each of them 2 times. I'm going to address them from the leader to the follower, and then I'm going to address them the other way around from the follower to the leader. Because there's got to be a working relationship both ways. So as the leader, I have to identify the personalities of the people on my team. I got to know who they are. I got to know how they operate, what their personalities are. That's going to determine how comfortable they are in certain situations, how well they're going to perform certain tasks, certain jobs, recognizing their strengths. Next point in your notes, look for their weaknesses. And I put in bold print. Hope it's in bold in yours. This is for the purpose of understanding, not undermining. Look for their weaknesses so that you can help them. Look for their weaknesses so that you know when you give a task or you give a job that they're not so strong in, you know that ahead of time. That way when you have to coach them a little bit and you have to help them and you have to work with them, you're not surprised. You're not condescending. You're not talking down to them because you already know that they're going to need a little help there. So look for weaknesses. Speak their love language. Back to the whole idea of we can try to affirm people and we can try to build people up, but if we're not speaking the right language, they're not getting it. So if you've got people on your team, try to identify what's their love language. You know, a card might mean the world to one person and the next person barely reads it before it's in the garbage. But that same person, if you come alongside of them and say, man, and just verbally say, wow, you're doing a good job. This, and then all of a sudden you just made their day. Speak their language. Get on their level. Try not to consistently expect them to perform outside of who they are. Knowing the people on your team, if you're a leader, knowing the people on your team is critical. Because if I have someone on my team and I'm consistently throwing jobs and tasks and responsibilities their way that are outside of their natural giftings and their personality and the way they operate just as a person, they're not going to be productive and they're not going to be happy on my team. They're not going to be successful in ministry because everything I'm asking them to do is everything they hate to do. It's the things that drains them. So they might be able to get the job done, but they live in a constant state of exhaustion. Just, man, I just want out of this. Try not to expect them to consistently perform outside of who they are. There are times when we give people jobs to help them grow, to help them take the next step. There are times when people have to pick up jobs because that's just what needs to be done. But I don't want to consistently put that on their plate. Now for the other side of it, you're the team member. You're working with your leader. Identify the personality of the person you're working with. Knowing your leader's personality is going to help tremendously. If you have a cleric leader and you know they're a cleric leader, you're not going to be offended when they just say, hey, Thor, here's the job, here's what needs to be done, thanks. You know good and well that that's just how they operate. They didn't mean like, I don't have time for you, get out of my face, go do something. That's not what they were saying. Certain personalities, that's what you're going to feel like they're saying. But if I know how that person operates, if I know my leader's sanguine, and I'm standing there going, just spit it out, what do you want me to do? And it takes them 15 minutes, I'm not standing there feeling like, wow, they just want to waste my time. They're just, wow, this is ridiculous. Spit it out. I'm not doing that because I understand the person I'm working with, they're sanguine. They are trying to tell me something. They're trying to communicate. It's just going to take a minute. And I can understand that. If I don't know that, I'm just going to be extremely frustrated. Just tell me, please. Look for their strengths. Identify your leader's strengths. Sometimes when you're on a team or you're in a following position, we'll get to the weaknesses, but that's all that sticks out. Well, man, they're the one leading the thing, and they can't do this, and they don't do this, and they're not very good at that. And we get this nitpicky attitude. Look for your leader's strengths. What are they good at? Where are they really leading the charge? Take your mind to those things. That way, you're not feeling that. When those things come up in your mind, well, they're not doing this and they're not doing that. If I've intentionally searched out their strengths, I can say, yeah, but they are doing this, and man, they're really good at that. They're doing a good job here. Look for your leader's strengths. Look for their weaknesses. Same point. This isn't to undermine, it's to understand. Your leader's not going to be strong at everything. They're not going to be good at everything that has to be done. If I know that, then when it happens and the leader performs in a way that I think, I could have done better, maybe you could have. Why not go and say, hey, I noticed here's a job that needs to be done. I feel like I have a skill set. Would you mind if I tried that? You mind if I help out with that? 9 times out of 10, they're going to be really excited about it because they don't like to do it anyways. Look in a way that helps you understand, not in a way that's critical. Speak their love language. Make sure you're affirming and you're communicating well with your leader. Kind of some of the same points. I'm not going to revisit all of them, but that kind of works both ways. Because as a leader, you can get to feeling sometimes like, man, they don't even care. But that's just because that person doesn't understand. It's not that they don't care. They're just saying it a different way. Figure out what gets through to them. And in the same way, try not to consistently expect your leader to perform outside of who they are. You can't say, well, they're the leader. They just got to get good at everything. Good luck. It's probably not going to happen. They're going to be more effective in their strengths. If they're a true leader, are they going to pick up the slack when something they're not good at needs to happen? You better believe it. Are they going to do it phenomenally and blow everybody's mind? Sometimes, sometimes not. You can't consistently expect people to perform outside of who they are. All right. Next point, know what needs to be done. We're talking about work. We're talking about getting things done, working with people. So I know who I am. I know who you are. You know who I am. We're on the same page there. Now we got to talk about what needs to be done. Specific goals. Set specific goals. When I say specific, I mean well communicated. I'll say that word a lot during this point. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Talk about what it is we're after. The more vague things are, the harder they are to obtain. But when you sit down as a team, you sit down with the people you're working with, and you really hammer it out, what are we trying to accomplish? that in itself makes it so much simpler to get there. Long-term goals provide vision. We overcomplicate vision sometimes. We want to know, like, what are we going to be doing the day before Jesus comes? Long-term goals are vision. It's far enough outside of our reach that we can't get it tomorrow, but that's where we're going. It's a long-term goal. Short-term goals provide evaluation. So if we set a long-term goal, this is where we're going, then we set short-term goals in between where we are and that vision. And that helps us to evaluate whether or not we're on the right path. If we're not hitting our short-term goals and our goals lie between where we are and where we want to go, then we're either going the wrong direction or we're not moving at all. Short-term goals help us to evaluate. When you're given out a task, this is from the leader to the follower. When you're given out a task, communicate about the purpose of the task. Sometimes it's easier just to give out the task. People don't understand what they're doing. Back to Nehemiah's wall. When he just stuck these people, he didn't just say, hey, I want you guys to build 15 feet wide and just build this little portion. They knew good and well that there was a wall being built all the way around the city and that their little part was going to connect to somebody else's little part. There was purpose to what they were doing. People always work harder when there's purpose behind what they're doing, when they feel like there's a reason for the job they're doing.
Not only that, sometimes too, like, if that purpose isn't communicated, I might think I know what they're talking about, and then I might build something completely opposite of what they're thinking, and then you got rework, and then, that miscommunication can cause ill feelings and stuff like that,
Yep.
So that avoids that whole situation.
Communicate, next point in your notes there, communicate how each person's role helps to accomplish the goal. When you're in a team meeting or you're again giving out tasks, communicate not only the purpose but how each person's responsibility helps to accomplish the goal. You set goals together. Now when you're in a Sunday school meeting, you're talking about how the teachers, what is their part? And the ones that are doing attendance, what is their part? Why is that important? Help people to understand that what they're doing is helping you accomplish the goal that they were a part of setting. Because they were a part of setting that goal, they want to reach their goal. So if they know what they're doing is helping the team as a whole move towards that goal, they're going to feel a lot better about it. They're going to be passionate about it. It's not going to be, I just say how many kids are in each class. I'll just come up with an icebreaker for a youth group just so we have something to do. No, there's a point to it. When we have a youth service, we have 30 minutes before, from 6:30 to 7, we do treats and drinks. Then we do an icebreaker, then we have prayer, then we have worship, then we have a lesson. Well, we do 30 minutes before treats and drinks so that we know everyone's here, typically, before we get started with anything spiritual, and it also provides an opportunity for fellowship. The icebreaker has nothing to do with anything else we do throughout the night, but whoever's on for that icebreaker has to understand that there's a point to that. What that does is it takes all these young people's minds that were at school and were at home, had an argument with their parents, has 3 pages of homework to do, and it, even for 15 minutes, gets everybody thinking about the same thing. Now they're not so scattered. They're all thinking about the same thing. We move from that into prayer. While we're in, that same vein of being in the same mind, we move into worship, then the Word of God goes forth. There's a point to every person's role. Nobody just has a job to fill time. Communicate that role. Put time limits on both long and short-term goals. What happens if you don't put a time limit on it? As a leader, if I say, if I give you a job, Thor, and I give you the job, you accept the job, can I hold you accountable without a time restraint?
No, because usually,
I can come to Thor 2 weeks later and say, hey, why isn't that done? Oh, I'm working on it. Now, I wanted it done already, but he had no idea. He's working on it. It's going good. He didn't know that I wanted it done by this time. So put time limits. Put restraints so that we can go back, we can hold each other accountable. From the other side of things, the setting specific goals, that goes both ways. Leader, follower, you're working together, you're setting goals, you're casting vision. Communicate about the purpose of the task. When you're given a task, you got a leader who says, this is what I want you to do. Communicate about that. Make sure you understand. Joe, you kind of brought it up a minute ago, but I want to make sure I understand it the way you're wanting me to understand it. If you're wanting me to get a job done, I want to talk it out enough to where I know what it is you want me to do when I leave. Not what I think you want me to do, because that can be two totally different things. And I can think I'm doing the job and not really be doing what the leader asked me to do. So communicate about the purpose. Okay, this is what you want me to do. Now, why do you want me to do that? What's my goal here? Communicate about the purpose. Communicate how each person's role helps accomplish the goal. That again works both ways. I'm not going to reiterate all of that. Put time limits. Put time limits on long and short-term goals. Hold yourself accountable. Make sure you know, if we're going to do a promo, we did the Grizzly Temptations. Now, if Pastor would have said, I want a Grizzly Temptation, here's kind of what I want, you guys make it happen, and they didn't ask for a time restraint, well, he could be preaching the message series 2 weeks before they're editing the video. And they were working hard. Now they're frustrated. Because he's saying, hey, sorry, I'm preaching it now. It's time to go. We're just going to do it. Thanks for your help. And they're going, well, I just put 2 weeks worth of work into this. You didn't tell me you want. So on your part, if a leader gives you a job, hey, when does this need to be done? Some jobs need to be done tomorrow. Some jobs need to be done in 2 weeks. Just talk it out. When does it need to be done? What are we trying to accomplish? Understand the process of doing. Their process of doing. You're working with people. When a task is delegated, there are typically two processes that come to mind. How you see it getting done and how they see it getting done. You ask someone to do something and you say a lot more in your mind than you do with your mouth. Mike mentioned one night, I think it was an ATI class, maybe it was something different, but there was a time in the sanctuary there where he asked me, hey, can you help me move these chairs? Okay, I just pick the chairs up and I start moving the chairs because that's how I operate. But he said other people were like, well, or maybe it was your personality you were comparing it to. He said if that was him, he would say, well, why? Why are we moving the chairs? How are we going to go about moving the chairs? So there's two processes that come to mind. As a leader, I want to know their process of doing. If I'm going to ask someone to do a job, I don't want to be frustrated because they're not doing it the way I think they should. Back to the chair thing. If someone asks a cleric to move these chairs, they're going to grab the chairs. I'm not going to move around too much because they're video. I'm going to grab the chairs and I'm going to physically start carrying the chairs to their hallway and I'm going to put them away. If you ask the same one to move the chairs, they're going to pick up one chair and they're going to walk around the room for 15 minutes, gathering other people to help move the chairs. The chairs are going to get put away. But there's two totally different processes of moving these chairs around. So I want to understand their process before I ask them. And that way, if I specifically don't want it done that way, I need to say that. If I don't really care how the chairs get put away, then you can just understand they're probably going to do it differently than I would and let it go. But you got to understand their process, otherwise you end up frustrated. You know, as a cleric, you're saying, why are they walking around with one chair? All they got to do, it would take 5 minutes, so they just pick the chairs up. I'm frustrated. They're doing their job. They're just not doing it how I would do it. Consider how they would do it. That's where you got to start. If you're going to ask someone to do a job, you already know how you want it done. You know good and well if you were going to start that job, you know what your first step would be. But you're delegating it. So start by considering how they're going to think about what you want done. Then you can determine, do I want to let them do it their way? Do I want to give a little direction? You're the leader. But you got to know where they're going to be coming from. Talk about how it will be done. Now, are we going to have a 15-minute conversation about moving the chairs? Probably not. But a lot of tasks that you give out, give the task out and then ask, no, okay, how are we going to get this done? How are we going to do this? That way you know, okay, this is how they're going to do it. And then back to the accountability thing. I can, as a leader, I can then hold them accountable because they told me they were going to do it this way. Step 1, step 2, step 3. If I don't know that, then when I come and I say, hey, are you working on that? Oh, yeah, I'm working on it. I don't know if they are or not. I don't know what their process is. This is a quote that hangs in my office in a picture. It is a fact that in the right formation, the lifting power of many wings can achieve twice the distance of any bird flying alone. None of us are going to achieve all that God wants us to in this church by ourselves. Working with people is critical to our next step of revival. If we're going to accomplish what God wants us to do, it's going to take more than you, more than me. We're all going to have to be working together. We kind of tag the phrase around here. Pastor says all the time, teamwork makes the dream work. Now these points the same way if I'm the follower. When a task is delegated, when somebody asks me to do something, those same two processes exist. I know how I want to do it, and they know how they want it done. So real quickly, consider how they would do it. If you're being asked to do something, know that leader well enough to know, okay, this is how they would probably do the job. Because then, if I'm going to please my leader, if I'm going to accomplish what they're asking me to do, it's going to help to know how they would do it. Talk about how it will be done. There's nothing wrong with if somebody says, hey, here's what I want you to do. You say it, all right, this would be my game plan for that. Here's what I'm going to plan on doing. Communicate that with them so that when they see you walking around the room talking to 15 other people with one chair, they know you are getting the job done. And that, I'm just using two situations there. If it was a phlegmatic, they would probably sit alone and wait until everyone was gone so that they didn't have to interrupt anybody's conversation carrying the chairs out. Talk it through. Let them know, okay, I have no problem moving the chairs out. I just want to let you know I'll probably wait till everybody's gone or it clears out a little bit. Communicate. Right. They would stand up and say, hey, if we could have everybody help out, I want you two to take each chair. And really comes down to communication. My father-in-law says all the time, communication is a beautiful thing when it happens. And a lot of times we think we're communicating really well and we're not even on the same page. So really, it sounds like we're over-communicating when I put it this way, but I don't know that we can over-communicate things. The more we talk, the more we envision things together and talk about the details, the more we're going to be on the same page. Back to the point that the more vague things are, they're hard to grasp, they're hard to accomplish. But when we're talking it out, we know what needs to be done, we know how we're going to go about doing it. We realize other people are strong where we're weak. We're strong where they're weak. We're truly working as a team. We can accomplish our goals. The last point there is build people, not projects. We're working with people. Matthew 9:37 and 38, pretty familiar verse. Then saith he unto his disciples, the harvest truly is plenteous, but the laborers are few. Pray ye therefore the Lord of the harvest that he will send forth laborers into his harvest. He didn't say the harvest is going to waste, so pray for the harvest. Because the harvest is there. He said pray for laborers. The story of the man who went to the market and he was recruiting workers all day long kind of comes to mind. He goes there and at 9 o'clock he's getting workers, and 12 o'clock he's getting workers. And I've read that story before and I thought, man, if it's so critical, why didn't he just go to work? If the crop was literally dying in the field, why didn't he just go and start gathering it in? Because he understood that if he would focus more on getting people, more work would get done. He accomplished far more by getting a group of men in the morning, a group of men at midday, a group of men here, a group of men there. These weren't lazy people. It's almost sounds sarcastic when you read it. He comes up to these guys at the end of the day who were obviously good people, desiring to work. They'd stayed there all day looking for work, and he comes up and he says, "Why are you standing around idle in the marketplace?" Kind of like slap in the face. We've been here all day looking for work. But he's realizing that if he just focuses on people, then the work's going to get done. He could have went to the field and he could have done one man's work, but he ended up with how many? How many men out there working, getting stuff done? Just a few points. Pray for those that you labor with. We're talking about building people. Not departments, not projects, not ministries, but really building people. Pray for them. We identified their weaknesses. We know a lot of times the struggles that the people on our team have, your leaders and the people on your team. Take some time and actually pray for those people. Speak encouragement to them. Come alongside them. Let them know they're making a difference. Point out the things they're doing well. Build them up. Speak highly of them. If they're on your team, which we're all on the same team, by the way, so don't run anybody down, but speak highly of people. Especially people, you should be the safest person in the church for someone else to come to and say, "Man, that person on your team, I can't believe they did this." You should be the safest person in the church for them to come to. Because you've already identified their strengths, and yeah, they might have dropped the ball. And instead of saying, "Yeah, I don't know why they did that, man," speak highly of that person. Yeah, they messed up, but you know what? That person does this, and man, they're phenomenal at that. Turn that thing around. Speak highly of people. Build them up. Bless them when possible. Back to their love language. Back to finding out what makes them click. Be a blessing to the people on your team. You protect what you're invested in. You think about when you buy a house or you buy a car. You put insurance on that thing. You put floor mats and seat covers, and for like the first 2 days there's no eating or drinking in there. You protect it because you're invested into it. So what we need to be investing into isn't the youth department or the Sunday school department. Because if my team is strong, if your team is strong, then our departments are going to be just fine. If our people are doing good, then our ministries and our departments, they're going to run just fine. I want to invest in people. And that really is where we're at. That's where we're at as a church. We have good ministries. We have good people. We got good workers. We've got to make application of the things we're hearing here. We got to take what we're hearing here back to the teammates that aren't in this class yet, and we got to begin to grow as people and build each other up as people. And we talk about making disciples sometimes, but when is that process over? When are you fully discipled? Never. This class is about making disciples. When you're teaching a Bible study to a brand new person, the goal is to make a disciple, and that just continues all the way up. So we continue to strive to be better, to build each other up. We continue to pull those that are just under us up to another level. And God takes His church to another level. And He opens doors, and He allows us to minister in ways that we never really could by ourselves.